aboard, everybody, to another chill stream. Yes, it's time for Sam Shamoon to take a nap in the chat room. So, good night, Sam. Thanks for joining us. Hi, everyone. Hope everybody is having a great day, morning, evening, wherever you are. Now I'm at the right one. Okay, where were you? I don't know where you were, but yeah. Oh, there you go. Sam has already reached this first REM cycle, and we haven't even started the chill stream. We're getting better. All right, Sam. As usual, great program. Great program. Clinic, 3 hours. I think. I saw the last 20 minutes of it. So, guys, all of you are familiar with Sam Shamoon. If you're not, you got to check out his stuff. He's amazing. Yeah. Yep, we did. That was David. David had pre-recorded that, and we just released it. So, but this is live, believe it or not, even though I don't look like I'm alive at 3:30 in the morning. We are live, and we're going to dive into Matthew 27:43. So that's going to be fun. This is part 3, is it? And hopefully we can finish today. I'm taking my time because it's an important passage I use a lot, and we actually had some pushback on it. So I'm dealing with the objections, and hopefully I have the right slides and everything for today. But anyway, hey, good morning. Hello, everybody. And Sam, if you want to come on board, you're more than welcome, but I bet you're exhausted after that last live stream. And also, hopefully, James from Divine Mercy will join us. I purposely made my slides colorful for James because he was making fun of me because I was too monochromatic. Monochromatic. It's this early, my pronunciation centers of the brain just doesn't work, especially Greek. Not that it's ever very good, but that's still asleep. But hopefully I won't put you guys to sleep except for Sam. Let's see. This is Asians, good timings. Oh, that's good. I'm glad to hear that. Where are you, by the way, James? If you don't mind. By the way, yeah, if you don't mind in your chat room, let me know where you're from. Just so I could get an idea of. I know we have some Australians. Oh, Singapore, awesome. Yeah, we have some Australians. Apparently, Singapore. It's in the evening there, right? And it's morning in Europe. I know because David Savara says that he wakes up in the morning and listens to my chill stream before he goes to work. So he has some long days. By the way, we are going to have a team stream today, I believe at 1:00 p.m. Eastern time, where we're going to tear apart Gavin Ortland's response. He brought on Cleve to Antiquity and some other fellow I'm not familiar with. And man, this is a trash fire. It's horrible. And I don't know why Gavin Ortland does this. You think he would have better discernment. But I've already listened to a little bit of it, and misquoting sources. It's horrible. It's not as low as like Steve Christie level, but it's maybe like one step above it. Horrible job. And so we're gonna tear it apart and try to show all the deception. Guys, I've been dealing with this topic for a couple decades, right? I wrote 3 books on the subject, doing the Apocrypha Apocalypse, and there was really lowbrow, bad apologetics out there when I started on the canon. Here we have Gavin Ortland releasing this video. It's the same stuff. They're even using the same old sources, but these are new people. But there's also indications that we're winning, and hopefully I'll be able to point some of that out on our live stream. So actually, David's going to tackle some of their stuff. I'm going to tackle some of their stuff. William's going to tackle some of their stuff. We're all going to comment. It's going to be a lot of fun today, 1 o'clock Eastern time. For some of you, that might be like in the middle of the night, but hopefully for others, you'll be able to check it out. Yeah, and it's Thursday, so we're doing a chill stream. Next chill stream will be Saturday, and it's great. It's great to see familiar names in the chat room. Welcome aboard. Anybody new here, please subscribe, like, hit the bell, do that stuff, because sometimes I do impromptu chill streams, and you won't know about it unless you see it on the feed, or maybe, if YouTube will alert you, you'll get an alert if you do that stuff. So please, that help us expand the algorithm, get some viewing, because, like this pushback we're going to do on Gavin Orland, or the debate breakdown we did yesterday, I think that information needs to get out more to the public. And although this channel is exploding, it's still relatively small, and we aren't really getting into the big feeds. And you can help us change that by subscribing, like, hit the bell, do all that stuff. Okay, so let's see. See, I'm not quite as entertaining as Sam to get programs off I'm not going to sing for you, and I'm not as good looking as Sam, so I can't do the song and dance stuff to start off the stream like I should. But I will say good morning. I could do that. Okay, guys. Welcome aboard. This is part 3. And yeah, look at this color. I hope James is here. James, are you here? From Divine Mercy Apologetics, which, by the way, another great channel to support, friends. Great guy. Excellent research. Yeah, I should be probably putting this stuff up. Love the content that refutes Protestant claims about the canon. Looking forward to learn. Yeah. Well, you're at the right place, Michigan fan, because that's all we do. Oh, Master of Apocrypha. Yeah, that's funny. Team streams trashing times for us. Streams good time. Okay, good. Let's see. All right. Okay, so here is the review of the argument really quick. For those who missed parts 1 and 2, I'm just going to rip through this really quick. Passage in view is Matthew 27:43. This is at the foot of the cross during the crucifixion. You have the crowds jeering Jesus. They say, Jesus, you said destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days. Save yourself if you're the Son of God. Come down from the cross. Very important. Notice the taunt. The taunt is, you said you would rebuild the temple in 3 days. Save yourself if you are the Son of God. Okay? Because after all, if Jesus can do the bigger thing, rebuild the temple of Herod and the second temple, then obviously he could save himself from being executed on the cross. Now, in 41, notice now the leaders chime in. And the leaders are the chief priests, scribes, and elders. And they repeat the crowd's jeer in 42. You saved others, cannot save himself. So this is the King of Israel. Let him come down from the cross, and we believe you. So Jesus, come down from the cross, we will believe you. Okay. But there you go, Joey. Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. Great to have you with us. He said, trusted in God, let him deliver him now if he wants him. For he said, I am the Son of God. Now notice, this is a big change, because now it's no longer saying, Jesus, come down from the cross and we'll believe in you because you work miracles, you can do it. Now it's pointing to God to vindicate Jesus. Okay? God to vindicate Jesus. He trusted in God, let him, who? Let God deliver him. Now, if he wants him, why? For he said, I am the Son of God. And that's the part we're looking at. They want God to vindicate Jesus's claim to be the Son of God. How? By rescuing them. Okay. And we go through all those different permutations. We tore this apart. We showed that. We showed there are two basic texts that are behind this. You'll see this in cross references, both Protestant Bibles, when they used to have these books in them, and Catholic Bibles. You'll have a reference to Psalm 22:9 and Wisdom 2:18. I'll give you a little context there. Both of these texts are at work in the same passage, and we tore that apart. We pointed out how here are the words in common and that Psalm 22:9 has with Matthew 27:43. I colored the words for you and I gave you the Greek. So in case you don't know Greek, at least you can see it. But notice the unique part is, for he said, I'm the Son of God. So how do you connect, or how did the chief priests, scribes, and elders connect some sort of divine promise that God would rescue the true Son of God, right? How do they put that together? Well, Wisdom 2:18 provides the key, because notice it supplies the part that is lacking in Psalm 22:9. And here's all the common stuff. We already talked about that. We've looked at commentaries. Matthew expects his readers to understand how benighted the attitude of the opponents of the righteous man in Book of Wisdom is and will be shown to be as the book unfolds. So basically they're riffing off this. So you got this basically, Psalm 22:9 and then Wisdom 2:18. Then we looked at the word gar, because he says, for he said, I'm the Son of God. We did some basic Greek studies here, looked at lexicons, and basically what the lexicons say is, let's see. Yeah, let's use this one. Gar, or for in Greek, introduces the reason for a statement which usually precedes. Okay, that's basic meaning. So what's the statement that usually precedes? Psalm 22:9. Okay. He trusted in God, let him deliver him now if he wants him or desires him. For, he said, I'm the Son of God. So the for explains the reason why they expect Psalm 22 to be triggered into action, and that's the claim to be the Son of God. But like we said, in our previous programs, when you look at Psalm 22, it doesn't say anything about Son of God. Oh, I should show this. Hey, Joey Esto, thank you so much for the gift memberships. Appreciate it. As always, you're the man. And thank you so much for supporting our ministry. I truly, truly appreciate it. Everybody needs to be friends with Joey Esto, because he's super generous with gift memberships. So thank you so much, Joey, for supporting it. Okay, so we actually read the whole psalm, and there's nothing in here about Son of God. Not even hinted at, really. So where does this connection with the Son of God come from? How do they put Wisdom 2:18 and Psalm 22 together? Here's the breakdown of all the words that are connected. You guys can take a screenshot of that or hit pause. And it's basically Wisdom 2:18. By the way, I didn't even read Wisdom 2:18. Boy, I don't know what in the world my mind is working. I think I'm starting to go to sleep with Sam, hitting those REM cycles. Let's see. Wisdom 2:18 says, let us see whether his words are true. Let us find out what happens to him. For if the just one be the Son of God, he will deliver him, or he will defend him and deliver him from the hands of his foes. So you have Son of God here. You have it as a test case for if the just one be the Son of God, God will defend him. And we also showed that that word rescue, defend, is one of those common words, like it's translated delivered here. In the Greek is a common word. Matthew 23 has, Psalm 22:9 has, Wisdom 2:18 has. And it also has thematic parallels as well as linguistic. So Wisdom 2:18 is like the glue that cements this whole argument together. It provides the reason why they believe that God is going to rescue the true Son of God as described in Psalm 22. And then we talked about the implications of this, right? How do they ground this expectation that God is going to rescue the true Son of God? Do you do it as part of common knowledge? Well, God usually seems to, whenever there's a just person that's being executed, apparently God rescues them. No, that would not be a common expectation, right? We talked about that. God does rescue people from execution, like Daniel and lion's den, through a miraculous deliverance, but that rarely happens. Many times God doesn't seem to rescue them, at least not in this life. So they couldn't have based this on some sort of common knowledge. And remember, guys, remember, put yourself in the sandals of the enemies of Jesus. They do not believe he's the Messiah and Son of God. The chief priests, scribes, and elders at the foot of the cross think he's a false Messiah who's deceiving Israel. So here they think he's just going to be executed. It'll be the end of the movement. And they have their prime opportunity to destroy Jesus and his movement once and for all, to deliver the final coup de grace, right? The final death blow. And so they say, let God deliver him if he wants him, for he said, I'm the Son of God. And they don't expect him to be delivered. They expect him to die, because that's what happens in crucifixion. It's a form of execution. But for this to have teeth, right, it's got to be grounded somewhere. So where is it grounded? It's not grounded in common knowledge, right? This isn't something that happens all the time in scripture or in history. It does happen miraculously, but how would you get an expectation from the few instances that God does deliver, right? So it can't be common knowledge. It wouldn't make any sense. In fact, it wouldn't be much of a taunt. Well, maybe they're using a well-known apocryphal text that's just human writing. It's not divine, but its wisdom is just one of those popular reading, fan fiction type things that were circulating in the first century. Well, the problem with that is that can't justify a divine promise, right? No one would believe on a purely human apocryphal text, the basis of that God would do anything, because it doesn't come from God, right? God never promised to deliver the true Son of God. So they couldn't have seen wisdom as being an apocryphal text. Now, I always argue you can even take it one step further, right? If all they had to back this taunt was an apocryphal text, then it would actually backfire, right? Put yourself in the feet or the sandals of the crowd. You hear your own rulers; they're going to say something that's so devastating it destroys the whole movement. And the best they could come up with is a line from an apocryphal text. Really? I mean, that, if anything, that would backfire. That would show, wow, this claims of Jesus are really strong, that you have to resort to a text that no one expects to be divine, you know? Maybe there is something to this Jesus movement. If that's what the chief priests, scribes, and elders, they couldn't come up with anything in the Tanakh, the Old Testament. So you see, that would actually backfire if they believed wisdom was an apocryphal text. But if they believed that wisdom was a sacred text that God spoke in, and he did give this promise, then it follows that then their expectation would be grounded. This would have teeth, and yeah, the movement would be destroyed if God didn't rescue Jesus. And of course, God did rescue Jesus, but he didn't rescue Jesus by taking him down from the cross. After all, that's why Jesus was incarnate. That's why he was born of the Virgin Mary, was that he can offer himself as an offering for sin, right? That's his mission. Part of his mission is also the resurrection, right? And that's where God vindicates. And that's where the chief priests, scribes, and elders dropped the ball because, as far as they're concerned, the resurrection happens at the end of time. The Messiah isn't resurrected before the end of time. And they were wrong. They didn't understand the mystery of God, that the Messiah would be the firstborn of the resurrection, right? He would be the exemplar, the first one to be raised from the dead. So, and by the way, this also, I was going to do yet another part on this, but I'm not. But this is a fascinating verse, Romans 1:3-4. Hey, Divine Mercy's with us. Awesome. James, if you want, click the link. You can come join me backstage. Romans 1:3-4 says, the gospel about his son, descended from David according to the flesh, but established as Son of God in power according to the Spirit of holiness through the resurrection of the dead, Jesus Christ our Lord. Now, this is puzzling for commentators, because what does Paul mean when he says Jesus was established or manifested as the Son of God in the resurrection? It can't mean that Jesus wasn't the Son of God until he was resurrected, right? He was always the Son of God eternally. Well, then why is Paul saying that he's the Son of God and that this fact is established in power according to the Spirit of holiness through the resurrection? Well, wisdom 2 seems to provide the missing piece of this puzzle, right? Why he's established is because God has vindicated the true Son of God, right? It fits like hand in glove. And that's what the chief priests, scribes, and others weren't expecting. They thought that God would come and take him down from the cross miraculously, but they didn't understand that God is going to rescue Jesus from something even greater than crucifixion, an evil greater than that, namely the last enemy, which is death. So that is the victory. It's the ultimate victory through the resurrection. And that, the resurrection, establishes Jesus as God's Son, the Son of God, through Wisdom 2:18. And we go through some commentaries. Protestants recognize that. Then we went through objection. I'm not going to go through all this. By the way, hat tip to Sam Shamoon, because he's the one that called my attention to it and gave me some really good advice that I incorporated here for your benefit. So please support our brother Sam. He's awesome, and he deserves not only our prayers and our attention, but also our financial support. So show some love to Sam, because he's not only is his own stream tremendously helpful, but he helps other streams as well, like mine. And of course, we give benefits to Sam because my chill streams give Sam deep REM cycles in order for him to wake up, work out, get buff, get cut, and do more programs. So it's reciprocal. Yeah, so anyway, the first objection is, no, there is the Son of God in Psalm 22. And it's found in verse 20. Interesting enough, deliver my soul from the sword, my life from the power of the dog. And they point out that in the Septuagint, the Greek translation of this text, the word used here is monogamy or monogenes, which can be translated only begotten. Like Jesus is called the only begotten Son in John 1:14. So, yeah, so you can see almost, I don't want to call it desperation, but they're really looking for something in the psalm, anywhere in the psalm, to say something about sonship, divine sonship. So they say here, monogenes, this is clearly referencing Jesus as the Son of God. And we went through all the problems with that. First problem is the biggest problem of all. That is not the words used in Matthew 27:43. Monogenes is a different Greek word than theohuios. Son of God. And in English, you can see that. Greek, you can see that. It's not a match. So you have to do all sorts of twists and turns to make this work. You have to say monogenes actually means only begotten son, which it doesn't say there. And then say that that's the connection that, yeah, it's a bad argument to get out with. Then you have the additional problem that none of the English translations of this verse actually translate it as only begotten son, except for the Brenton translation of the Septuagint. And there's a reason for that, which we got into. We pointed out that the Hebrew word that's translated only begotten in the Septuagint, which is Yahid, is in Psalm 22:21 should be, and this is Brown, Driver, and Briggs, this is the standard Hebrew lexicon out there. Protestant, everybody uses it. It's very good. It should be translated, my only one, that says poetry for my life, as the one unique and priceless possession which can never be replaced. And I underlined in red, see that, Psalm 22:21. So, and other lexicons point out the very same thing. So what is this deal with Hebrew poetry? These lines are in synonymous parallel. That is a form of Hebrew poetry where the first line is expanded on using different words in the second line. And as you can see here with synonymous parallelism, I highlight what it does. Deliver my soul from the sword, my only one from the power of the dog. So soul and my only one, or only begotten, are two ways of saying the same thing. So it's not referring to divine sonship, it's referring to his life, his soul. You can see this in the Tanakh 1985 version. Save my life from the sword, my precious life from the clutches of the dog. So you got that. And then Sam pointed this out, which was brilliant, Sam. If you were only awake, you could actually hear these compliments. He brilliantly pointed out that if you plug this back into Matthew 27, when Jesus says, I am the Son of God, if he's saying, I am the monogenes, the only begotten, you run into all sorts of heretical problems, because he would be basically saying, I am my own only begotten. Or he would say, I am the, when he says, I am the Son of God. So there's only one only begotten in the Trinity, that's the Son. Okay. So that'd be like a new fangled quadrinity or something weird. I don't even know what heresy. Sam, what heresy would that be? It'd be modalism. See, you anticipated my question. Yes. Yeah, very good. Very good. So, okay. So we pretty much put a fork in that one. Last chill stream, we went over this Psalmic network. Basically, there is a mention of the Son of God in Psalm 2. So some people try to scramble to somehow make Matthew 27:43 be talking about Psalm 2 in addition to Psalm 22. And they usually do it by saying, well, all the Psalms work together as a network. So if you appeal to one Psalm, you're really appealing to all the Psalms, especially Messianic Psalms, and presto changeo, Psalm 2, right? And there's problems with it. Basically, scholars recognize there is an order to the Psalter. That doesn't fit in because Psalm 22 is in book 1, and Psalm 2 is in the introduction, a distinct, different part of the Psalter. We also noted how the title Son of God is unique. There are sons of God, plural, in the Bible, but Son of God, singular, is found in Daniel 3:92, referring to the fourth person in the fire with the 3 children. It's also used corporately for Israel in Wisdom 18:13, but the title is found as individual or collective in Wisdom 2:18. It's pretty rare. So we're looking at a title, right? And that doesn't fit Psalm 2 at all, because Psalm 2 doesn't refer to the Son as a title. It never says Son of God or the Son of God. It says, you are my son, to this day I have begotten you, or today I have begotten you. So you have it as a title in Matthew 27. You have it as a title in Wisdom 2. It's not mentioned at all in Wisdom 22. And for Psalm 2, it's not a title, but it's this begotten language. Again, it doesn't match very well. And the context is very different too, right? Because if you look at Psalm 2, the context is God's going to vindicate his son, his anointed, right? Not rescue him. Moreover, the foes here in Psalm 2 isn't the chief priests, scribes, and elders or the crowd. It's the nations, the Gentiles, the kings of the earth. So that doesn't match at all either. So it's not very good. Finally, we talked about this. This is fascinating, guys. Another objection is that earlier in Wisdom 2:13, the author calls the just one not son of God, but a child of God. And so the objection is, therefore, the Son of God's not messianic in wisdom. It refers just to all just people, because all just people are children of the Lord. And so therefore, when he says Son of God later on in verse 18, guess what? He's just talking about just someone who's with God, a godly person, a just person, not the divine title or the messianic title, Son of God, right? Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that. Yeah, thanks, Jan. Very good. Okay. We, like I said, this is fascinating, because if you look at the Greek for Wisdom 2:13, where the New American Bible translates it, child of the Lord, the Greek there, and James, if you want to come on, you can help me with pronunciation, because those centers of my brain are still asleep. In the Greek, it is paidia kurios, paidia kuriou. Okay. Child or son of Lord. Okay. Literally. Where in Wisdom 18, you have hoios theou. Okay. The root of that Greek word that's translated paidia is pas or pais. Okay. So two different words, but pace or pais is interesting, guys, because elsewhere in Scripture, it's used for the servant, the suffering servant in Isaiah. And I gave you three instances here. Isaiah 49:6. And he said to me, is a great thing for thee to be called my servant, to establish the tribes of Jacob and recover the dispersed of Israel? Notice the Greek word there is the same word used in Wisdom 13. There's a typo there. It should be Wisdom 13, which is paida. Okay. In Isaiah 50:10, we have paidos. And then in Isaiah 52:13, we have ho pace or pice. Okay. All of those are servant. In other words, the suffering servant is called a child, the same word. In fact, there's all sorts of connections between Wisdom 2 and the suffering servant songs in Isaiah. And this is from the Erdman's Commentary on the Bible. Peter Heyman wrote, quote, Nickelberg thinks that Isaiah 52:13 through 53:12 reflects the same pattern, and hence the use of Wisdom 2:13 with the word pais, child, just as in the Septuagint Isaiah 52:13. The author certainly has Isaiah in mind at this point. Wisdom 2:12a is taken almost word for word from the Septuagint of Isaiah 3:10. In fact, not only is he using the same Greek word that's translated child for servant, but he even quotes from Isaiah in the Septuagint, almost word for word, earlier in 2:12. So, hey, welcome aboard. Great to have you aboard the Sentinel. And here I give you it. It is true. It's almost word for word. In fact, the one word that's different, that's in green and blue, very similar words. So it actually quotes from Isaiah earlier on. It uses the same word Isaiah uses for servant. There are several scholars who say what wisdom is, it's almost like a homily on the suffering servant psalm. Okay. Now, this one blew my mind when I saw this. In fact, in Wisdom 2:18, remember they're trying to say, no, Son of God isn't a messianic title. It just means child of God. It just means the just one is just ordinary just people, all just people, not a specific individual. Okay, Isaiah 42 verse 1 says, Behold my servant whom I uphold, my elect whom I delight. I put my spirit upon him, that she shall bring forth judgment to the Gentiles. Very famous messianic passage, right? In fact, many of us are very familiar with this. What blew my mind is when I realized that in Wisdom 2:18, in the passage we're looking at, right, we actually have a correspondence, a lexical correspondence between that and Isaiah 42, when it says, For if the just one be the Son of God, he will defend him. That part is translated defend him, is the exact same words, just different forms of Isaiah 42. In other words, it should really be translated, For if the just one be the Son of God, he will uphold him. And that, I think, any reader that's familiar with the Bible would say this is beyond a doubt messianic, right? Wisdom 2:18 is talking about the Messiah, clear as day. So basically, it's like there's a nexus, a connection, a matrix of text that are at work here in Wisdom 2:18. Yeah, I know. This is pretty heavy stuff. So hopefully you guys can digest it overnight for you people out by Australia and out east. Um, for those getting up in Europe, you have something to think about during the day. We're actually going to talk a little bit about our articles too. Okay, so you can see that Isaiah's at work here. You have Psalm 22 at work here, and you also have that rare divine title or messianic title, Son of God, here. And then I pointed out that, really what we have here is a unique confluence of texts being brought together in Wisdom 2, because the reason I pointed that out is because Christie and others, in a way to deny the obvious, will often say, well, if the Deuterocanon has any value, it's because it's quoting proto-canonical books. And basically, that's the fallacy of composition, because even though it may include material from other places, the way it configures it is unique. And that's what the chief priests, scribes, and elders are pointing to. They're pointing to Wisdom 2:18. Yeah, heavy stuff. Okay, now we're into the new material. That was just a review. So if you're just joining us, welcome aboard. Guys, if any of you haven't subscribed, liked, and stuff, please do. Because chill streams, I try to do them. The new dates are Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday at 3:30 a.m. Eastern time. And sometimes if no one's streaming and I'm in the mood and I have material for you, I will jump on board without warning. So it's best to subscribe and do all that stuff. Maybe you'll get a ring or something for that, meaning like an alarm or something. So the two fits perfectly together. We talked about that. Now let's go into this one. This is the new one. The just one's not an individual, but a collective. So the objection is, the context of Wisdom 2 is that the just one, the child of the Lord, and the Son of God isn't a single individual, the Messiah, but a collective. It's a single noun that is actually an umbrella term for a group of people, but a collective that embraces all of the righteous. So therefore, Wisdom 2:18 is not a prophecy about Jesus. It's just talking about the common fate of all the righteous. So even though it says the just one, and it seems to be talking about a singular individual, it's actually talking about all the just. And by the way, commentaries, for some reason or other, actually go along with this. And they wrongly go along with it. And I'll give you the reasons why. So, and it's proof, and this is a good proof. So I'm not saying it's wrong, right? We'll get to that in a second. Wisdom 2:10, the objector says, let us oppress the needy, just man. Let us neither spare the widow nor revere the old man, for his hair grown white with time. So you can see here, obviously, the just man isn't an individual. It's just basically random just men. Same thing with the widow, right? There's obviously more than one widow involved here. This is just a general principle, general rule that speaks to many people, right? So the argument actually is fairly based, right? It's based in Wisdom 2:10, which definitely seems to be talking about more than one person, and therefore must reference a collective, not an individual. Okay, now let's tear this apart. Oh, actually, let me check with you guys. Give me a 1 in the chat room if you're following this. If you have any questions, throw it up there. And again, let me call out all of you just joining us. Welcome aboard, Chill Stream. We're going to do a team stream today, 1 p.m. Eastern. The whole team's going to be on board. We're going to tear apart Gavin Ortland's trash dumpster of a video. So that's going to be a lot of fun. If you can join us, I think you'll enjoy it. If you can't, you can catch it as a recording. Okay, it looks like people are following me. Excellent. Let's dive into this. And Sam's snoring. Guys, be quiet in the chat room. Don't wake up Sam. All right. First, this is a false dichotomy, right? Why only an individual or a collective? There actually is a third option that the objector doesn't consider, namely that the just one is a collective with a specific individual who is the exemplar of everything the collective is meant to be, right? That's the third option. It's strange that that isn't given consideration. And in fact, this is especially true for some messianic passages, which we're going to talk about in a second, such as the suffering servant songs in Isaiah. In other words, there are some suffering servant songs in Isaiah where the servant is an exemplar, an individual, everything that Israel was meant to be. So in a way, the servant is Israel, but specifically the Messiah who's the sufferer, right? So it isn't one or the other. It's both, but primarily an individual, okay? Just like the Messiah is primarily Israel itself, a personified Israel. Everything Israel is supposed to be is the servant. Yet Israel, in a general sense, is also a servant. Okay, I'm getting ahead of myself. In fact, you can see this here in Isaiah 49:3-6. You are my servant, he said to me, Israel, through whom I show my glory. Then verse 6, it says, is it too little, he says, for you to be my servant? And the servant word there is paideia, that pas that we talked about, that wisdom uses, to raise up the tribes of Jacob and restore the survivors of Israel. Now, see, there's a problem here between 3 and 6, right? Because the servant is identified as Israel, the nation, yet in verse 6, the servant, paideia, is to raise up the tribes of Jacob and restore the survivors of Israel. Now, hold on a second. Wasn't the servant Israel? how can the servant be Israel and also raise up the tribes of Jacob, that is Israel, and restore the survivors of Israel, if it is Israel? You see the problem? So those who are familiar with messianic apologetics, you already know this. This is very widely seen in the literature. In fact, there's a really good book by Moody. It's called Moody Handbook of Messianic Prophecy. It points out, so the servant is Israel in some sense, while at the same time being distinct from exiled Israel. He is best identified as the ideal Israel, whom is all that God intended the nation to be in contrast to exile in Israel, which failed to fulfill God's purposes. So hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, yeah, basically, yeah. Jan, you got it. Yep, absolutely. So as you can see, there is a third option. Okay, now let's go into the text and destroy this argument. Okay, first, it's pointed, we can point this out. This is weak. I'm going to start off with some weak points and get to stronger points. Let's see, Denzel, I will answer that in a second, but I want to do this. Good morning, Divine Mercy. If you want to come on board, my friend, please hit the link. I'd love to have you on board. Okay, first indication that this is speaking about individual. Must, should be, most. Yeah, thank you. See, the problem is sometimes I put the finishing touches on these things at like 2:30 in the morning. So forgive my typos, but you're right, that is a typo. Okay, singular noun, the most, I mean, if you're just looking at it, that's the plain meaning, is an individual. Now, obviously it can mean a group or a collective, okay? But I just want to point out that the plain meaning of a singular individual, like the just, your first inclination is individual unless proven otherwise, okay? So the default is that it's not collective, just simply as it is. Next, when wisdom speaks of a group, as in Wisdom 2:10, it does not use the article, interesting enough. So remember, Wisdom 2:10 says, let us oppress the needy just man, neither let us neither spare the widow nor revere the old man. Notice the yellow is dikaio, which doesn't have an article. That's plural. Okay. Where when you were talking about let us beset the just one, because he's obnoxious to us later in verse 12, now we have ton diaskon, or dikaion, excuse me, dikaion. So we have the article ton, okay, which you don't have when it's talking about plural. Now, this is weak, I admit it. It's just, all I'm doing is putting grains of sand on the scales. Each grain makes the scale tip a little closer to one area than another, okay? So that's yet another grain on the scale. Now, here's where we start getting into more weighty reasons why it's talking more of an individual or an exemplar of a collective, okay? So when you were reading some of these passages, they don't make sense, or they make better sense as an individual, not a collective. For example, so this is what I'm going to do. Let's take our objector. He says that it's all the just, okay? Whenever it says the just, it's talking about all the just. Let's go through Wisdom 2 and plug that in to see if it makes sense in that context, okay? So, does every just person censure the thoughts of the wicked? I would say no. Not every just person throughout history censures the thoughts of the wicked, but Jesus did. Matthew 9:4, Mark 2:8, Luke 5:22, and so on. Does every just person's life, is it unlike other men's and different from the ways of the wicked? Yes, but especially Jesus, right? Does every just person judge the wicked, the base, and hold aloof from our paths as something impure? They should, but Jesus did this explicitly, right? He called the Pharisees impure, whitewashed tombs. Does every just person bless the destiny of the just? Well, maybe, right? Does every just person boast that God is his father? Maybe not boast, but Jesus did, right? Um, is the title Son of God applied to every just person? Not as a title, but Jesus claimed it, right? According to Matthew 27:43. Is every just person reviled, tortured, and put to the test? Well, some were, but Jesus definitely was. Is every just person gentle and patient while being tortured? I would say not everyone, but Jesus was. Is every just person condemned to a shameful death? I think we can firmly say no, right? There are several just people that died, but they weren't executed shamefully, right? But Jesus was. Is every just person tested by the wicked according to their word that God would take care of? No, but Jesus was, right? Is every just person afflicted by people whose wickedness has blinded their hearts? No, but Jesus was. You see the problem here? Is every just person persecuted by those who are unaware of the hidden counsels of God? Probably, but Jesus's opponents were, right? So to say, well, when it says the just one or son of God, this refers to everybody as a collective whole, it just doesn't work, right? Is if you plug it into the context, it says things that aren't generally true of all the just. But interesting enough, it is true about Jesus, right? So I think that's pretty strong. Hopefully, you guys feel the same way. So, all right, Cheryl, Teresa, awesome. Yeah, so you feel the same way, and so does V for Yahweh. All right, collective is discussed in the next chapter in wisdom. Yes, that is very true. When you get to wisdom 3, that's when it starts talking about collective, but not here. In fact, I think there's a transition that's made actually in wisdom 2, where it starts with a obvious collective, but it seems to be then specifically talking about a single individual within that collective. Okay, here, this is very interesting. Sam, I don't know if you're still awake, but if you are, I'd love your comment on this, because this strikes me to be essentially the same thing that we find in Isaiah that we saw earlier, where the servant's Israel, and yet it constitutes Israel. It brings back Israel, which suggests that it's an individual distinct from Israel, yet part of Israel. Well, this phrase is a little less explicit, but I think it's kind of the same thing. This is Wisdom 2:16c. He calls blessed the destiny of the just. And by the word, notice here, the just here doesn't have an article, and it's a plural genitive. It'd be weird to translate it, but it'd be the just. Okay, it's almost hard to say. Literally, that's what it is in Greek. And Divine Mercy, if you're still here, you can back me up on this. Okay, why is this weird? This is weird because it seems to be talking about a person who is distinct from the just, yet part of it, kind of like in Isaiah, right? If the just one is a collective, then verse 16c should have said, they call their destiny blessed. That would mean that the plural, right, is calling the plural's destiny just. But it doesn't say that. Okay, or it should have said the just bless their own destiny, or he calls blessed his destiny. All those alternatives, I think, would show that this person that's being spoken of is an individual, is a collective, okay, is a collective. But the way it's actually phrased in Wisdom 2:16c, to me, suggests that it's actually an individual within a collective, right? He calls the destiny of the just blessed, or he calls blessed the destiny of the just. I don't know why I can't read that right. And that reminds me of Isaiah, because it's like in Isaiah, you have, why do I have this? Jacob is my child, I will help him. Israel is my chosen one, my soul accepted him. I have given him my spirit upon him. I've given my spirit upon him. Bring forth judgment to the nations. He'll not cry out. Yeah. So this is messianic. So why did I quote this? 49. Yeah, because Israel, it seems like the nation of Israel is the servant, but in 49:5, it says that the servant is going to, that Jacob may be brought back to him and Israel gathered to him. You see that? So if the servant is Israel, and yet Israel, the servant, is going to bring back Jacob and gather Israel, then obviously the servant is more of an exemplar of Israel, not a collective. It's an individual. And I think the same thing's going on here in Wisdom 2:16, as far as this person who calls the destiny of the just blessed, is distinct from the just in some way, but related to them. Okay, either you see it, you don't. Hopefully you see it. I didn't do a very good job describing it, but God willing, by his grace, it'll make sense to you. But we got more. So as we're tearing this apart, I also would point out that all the dependent sources that they concern they concern individuals, or individual as exemplars of a collective. For example, Isaiah 3:10 in the Septuagint. By the way, if you look up Isaiah 3:10 in your Bibles, chances are it won't say, "Let us bind the just one." That's only in the Septuagint. So if your translation doesn't follow the Septuagint, you won't see it. But anyway, fathers of the church, when they read Isaiah 3:10 in the Septuagint, understood it to refer to the Messiah individual, like Epistle Barnabas, Ambrose, Eusebius, so on. And then you have Psalm 22, which is used in Wisdom 2:18. That is messianic. It's individual. Everybody pretty much is on board with that. Isaiah 41, which is used in Wisdom 2:18 also. Remember, up to my servant whom I uphold. If he be the Son of God, I will uphold him. That's messianic, possibly exemplar of a collective. Okay. And also Isaiah 49:6, 50:10, 52:13, where they uses pais for the servant, is clearly messianic. So all these texts that Wisdom is drawing from the proto-canon, they're all individuals or exemplars of a collective. Does that mean that Wisdom 2 must be individual or exemplar of a collective? No, but it leans in that direction, right? It'd be a lot easier to interpret it. And then finally, guys, when we see how the early church fathers interpreted Wisdom 2, we find they all interpreted it, at least the ones that I could find, they interpreted messianically. This is actually a commentary on Isaiah from Origen that Jerome translated. Okay. It says, now according to Septuagint translators, it says, woe to their soul because they have devised an evil counsel against themselves, saying, let us bind the just one because he is useless to us, and so they will eat the fruit of their works. And that is Isaiah 3:10, which again, Wisdom 2:12 quotes, right? Jerome says, and Origen says, this is clearly spoken concerning the suffering of Christ, since they entered into their own wicked counsel, not so much against the just one as against themselves, against their own soul, and now they are eating the fruit of their works. So he saw it as individual. So what I think is going on here is I think actually that part, Wisdom 2:12, is where you have a transition where it starts off generally speaking, right, about oppressing the just one and the widow and so on. But when you get to verse 12, it seems to transition to a specific person or individual within a collective, starting with, let us beset the just one because he's obnoxious to us, and following. So I think there's a transition you can see there. So yeah, the early church fathers didn't interpret it as a collective, but individual. We have Lactantius in his Epitome 45, believed him to be the Son of God because he reproved their sins and injustice, conspired to put him to death, that it appeared this would happen. And then also Lactantius in Institutes 4:16 says this is messianic. In fact, it says, and Solomon in the Book of Wisdom used these words. And then he quotes from Wisdom 2. But from Solomon he foretold these things to the time that their accomplishment, 210 years intervened. So basically he's saying this is a prophecy. I'm not going to read all that. You guys can hit pause and read it for yourself. Hippolytus of Rome, I produce a prophecy of Solomon, which speaketh of Christ, and announces clearly and perspicuously things concerning the Jews, and those which have not yet befalling them at the present time, but those that would be snared befall them in the future age. And then he says the prophet says, so he actually calls the author of wisdom the prophet, and then it quotes Wisdom 2. And it says, and again, listen to this, O Jew, none of the righteous or prophets called himself the Son of God. That's interesting. And therefore, as in the person of the Jews, Solomon speaks again of the righteous one who is Christ. So if they interpret Wisdom 2 messianically, obviously they understood it as individual, singular, not a collective. Again, you have Pseudo-Cyprian testimonies against the Jews. 14 says that he is the righteous one whom the Jews should put to death, and it quotes Wisdom 2. Origen's homily, sorry about that. I don't know what happened there. I think StreamYard messed up this slide. But anyway, Origen also. They said he humbled himself to death, even death on the cross. The prophet also had predicted this. Let us condemn him to a most shameful death. Notice they all start at the same passage where I think there's a transition. Jerome's commentary, yeah, this is Jerome. Instead, they shed the blood of the just one, and he planned a wicked counsel, saying, let us tie up the just one because he's useless to us. Origen says, after the Lord's passion, there's nothing strong among the Jews. Not sure why I have that there, but you can see Tertullian also sees the same thing. Who is this but the Christ? Come, let us say, let's take away the righteous, because he's not in our turn, and he is clean contrary to our doings. And Augustine against Faustus 1244. But in the mysterious justice of God, they were blinded, and thinking only of the power of the Messiah, they did not understand his weakness, in which he died for us. The Book of Wisdom is prophesied of the Jews. Let us condemn him to an ignominious death, for he will be proved in his words. And then it continues. He says, These words apply also to those, in spite of all these evidences, in spite of such series of prophecies and of their fulfillment, still deny that Christ is foretold in the scriptures. Wow, that's an awesome quote from Augustine. So he quotes Wisdom 2 as proof that Jesus was foretold in the scriptures. And notice, guys, is he understanding the just one to be a collective? All the just? No, individual. Same thing with Gregory the Great in his Moralia. It says, say concerning that same Redeemer, and then it quotes Wisdom 2:12. Okay, so we're done with that, right? Clearly, Wisdom 2 is talking about an individual within a collective. So there could be applications to a collective. You could broaden it, but specifically it seems to be talking about an individual. All right, let's press on, guys. Let's see if we can end this series here. And by the way, for those joining us, welcome aboard. Have fun at the chill stream. Again, like, subscribe, do all that stuff. All right, now here's the next objection. But they erred. This one's kind of weird, but it's out there, so we got to answer it. Wisdom 2:21 says, now this is after Wisdom 2:18 and all that other stuff. These were their thoughts, but they erred, for the wickedness blinded them. Therefore, when it says that God will rescue the Son, the just one, the Son of God, wisdom itself says it is erroneous. I don't know. I honestly, it gives me a headache trying to figure out the logic of this objection. But apparently they want to wipe out the entire second chapter because verse 21 says that the wicked people erred. And by the way, guys, this became a pet peeve of mine for a while, but I'm okay with it now. Some people say erred. It's not pronounced aired. If I aired in a room, everybody would clear out of it, right? We're not talking flatulence, okay? People don't air in that sense. It should be pronounced erred. Yeah, they made a mistake, in other words. So anyway, so don't pronounce this aired. It should be erred. Sorry, could you explain erred? They made a mistake. They were wrong. Yep. Okay, so let's debunk this. Okay. The context tells us, how did they err? How did they make a mistake? How did they get this wrong? Okay, so let's read the context. It's very easy because the very next line explains it all. Okay. These were their thoughts, but they erred, for their wickedness blinded them. By the way, isn't it funny Jesus accused his enemies of being blind? Blind leading the blind. And they knew not the hidden counsels of God, neither did they count the recompense of the holiness, nor discern the innocent soul's reward. That's how they erred. First of all, they knew not the hidden counsels of God. In other words, there's a mystery going on here that they were not aware of. Okay? So it's not dismissing everything that was written beforehand. It's saying the reason why the wicked said all these things and did all these things is because they were wrong. Their wickedness blinded them, and they didn't know the hidden counsels of God. Neither did they understand that God recompenses people after life, right? There's recompense for holiness. There's a soul's reward. And that's another thing they didn't calculate. It didn't fit in their calculation. And actually, this just recaps what was said at the very beginning of the chapter, which the objector apparently missed. Because Wisdom 2 actually begins and it says, they who said among themselves, thinking not aright, brief and troublous is our time. And it goes on to basically explain kind of the same position you find in Ecclesiastes. You know, all is vanity, you go down to the ground, and that's the end of everything. In other words, they didn't calculate the afterlife. So here, this actually explains even more. So in verse 1, it says they erred. In verse 21, it says they erred. It's like bookends to the chapter. So let's read this. They said among themselves, thinking not aright, brief and troublous is our times, neither is there any remedy for man's dying, nor is anyone known to have come back from the netherworld. For haphazard we were born, and hereafter we shall be as though we had not been, because the breath of our nostrils is smoke, and reason is a spark of beating of our heart. So basically, when your heart stops, the spark is gone, and that's it. Total annihilation, right? And when it is quenched, our body will be ashes, and our spirit will be poured out abroad like unresisting air. Unlike where Scripture says our body goes to the ground and our spirit returns to the God who gave it, right? They say, no, it doesn't return to God. It just dissipates like air. And notice air here is A-I-R. Even our name will be forgotten, and no one will recall our deeds. That is where their thinking, their calculation, their view of the world is wrong. It's like this life is all there is, so eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die, and that's it. There's no recompense for a righteous life. There's no afterlife. This is it. Yeah. So when it says aright, in other words, they erred. Okay. What does aright mean? It means they didn't think correctly. They didn't think rightly. So aright means just a fancy way of saying wrong. Their thinking was wrong. So it's not dismissing everything that's said. It's just explaining how they came about with this view, right? So they didn't understand the mysteries of God. And so when they say, let's put the just one to death, and they figured, well, he's going to die. That'll be it. No recompense, nothing. And if he really is the Son of God, God will rescue him. Kind of like this chief priests, scribes, and elders, right? They thought it was curtains for Jesus because there's no resurrection till the end of time. So he must be, the only way he could be rescued from the cross would be God would have to take him down from the cross. But they erred as well, right? They were wrong. They did not think aright, the chief priests, scribes, and elders, because they didn't realize the Messiah rises again. They didn't understand the hidden counsels of God. And by the way, it's interesting. The word there is mysteria theou. Mysteria theou. And by the way, and this is just an interesting factoid that I ran across. Codex B, and this is from Austerley. Codex B, the Codex Vaticanus. Okay, we have 3 or 4 really, really early complete Bibles. They're basically books of the Bible. One of the most important ones is called Vaticanus. Okay. The reading of Vaticanus is interesting in this passage because it actually it says instead of saying they knew not the hidden counsels of God, Vaticanus reads they knew not his mysteries, meaning the righteous man's mysteries spoken of in verse 18. So this isn't part of the original wisdom, but it's kind of cool that there's a variant that actually very explicitly implies, or actually, I'm sorry, that's a contradiction. It certainly implies that the man spoken of in verse 18 is part of he plays a role in the hidden counsels of God. Kind of cool. So I thought I'd throw it out for you guys. After all, if you're joining me at this weird hour, you deserve a little thing like that. And also, you're probably familiar with it because Paul mentions it as well. 1 Corinthians 2, 1 and 2 says, I came to you, brothers, proclaiming the mysteries of God, mysterion tou theou. I did not come with sublimity of words or of wisdom. I resolved to know nothing while I was with you except Jesus Christ and him crucified. So what's the mysteries of God? The mysteries of God, mysterion to theou is Jesus and him crucified. Do you think there's a connection there with wisdom 2? Interesting. Yeah. So how did the wicked in wisdom 2, how did they go wrong? How did they misunderstand everything? They didn't understand the mystery of God. If you plug that in with 1 Corinthians 2:10, you have the answer. They didn't understand Jesus and Jesus's plan, the whole plan of redemption. Cool stuff. Okay, let's go through some commentaries and cross references, then we will call it a day. And by the way, if you have any questions, you can put it in the chat room. I know there's one. Actually, this would be a good place to feel that question. I didn't get a chance to read it, so let's read it together. Hopefully, I have an answer for you. It's from Denzel. I have a question. Which book of yours on the Deuterocanon do you think is the best bang for the buck? Basically, if someone can't buy them all, what would you recommend? I would recommend The Case for the Deuterocanon. Well, if you're going to do apologetics, I'd recommend that. If you just want info on the history of the Deuterocanon and how Protestantism got rid of these books, that type of thing, then Why Catholic Bibles Are Bigger. All right. Yeah, thank you for that question. And by the way, guys, I might as well mention this too. This is maybe a cheaper way to at least get Case for the Deuterocanon, I think. I'm not sure what the retail is. But on Patreon, if there is a level in Patreon where each level you get free ebooks of mine, you would actually get 3 books for approximately the price of a Case for the Deuterocanon, but it's ebook form. So maybe that might be a route. Maybe you can subscribe to Patreon for 1 month, and you get 3 ebooks. And I like ebooks because you can search them and stuff like that. All right. So let's look at some commentaries. Do Protestant commentaries see a connection between Wisdom 2 and Matthew 27:43? Well, let's find out. First, this is Strack and Billerbeck. This is a standard work, commentary on the New Testament with Talmud Midrash. It says, for if ye are the Son of God, come down from the cross. Wisdom 2:13, 16, and 20. So they see a connection there. Exegetical Dictionary in the New Testament says deliverance of mortal danger and persecution. The crucified Jesus is mocked, and God, in whom he trusts, should rescue him to verify his claim to be God's son. Matthew 27:43. This mockery is sharpened all the more when Jesus's adversaries cite, and that's actually, well, it's not a typo. Actually, the Septuagint has the slightly different chapter order. Psalm 21:9, according to Septuagint, and Wisdom 2:18, passages promising deliverance by God. So you have the Exegetical Dictionary, New Testament, connecting the dots here. All right. Yeah. Yeah. Who's to say that Jesus' apostle never quoted Deuterocanon, never read the Deuterocanon, or they're just lying? Here's Word Biblical Commentary, Donald Hagner, on Matthew 14-28. If the Christians can appeal to Psalm 22 as prefiguring the suffering of Christ, cf. the centrally important quotation is Psalm 22:1 in verse 46. Then the opponents of Christ can now quote the same psalm. From their perspective, the words seem to have a degree of plausibility, regardless of the fact to which they seem obvious, that in the psalm they are also spoken mockingly as the taunters of the righteous one who suffers. It is generally true from the perspective of the scriptures that they who trust in God may have confidence that God will deliver them. Remember, we talked about that. The close connection. Now notice this, CF, the close connections of Wisdom 2:18 through 20 with the present verse. For the moment, however, and by clear will of God, this is unique situation. There is no deliverance. So it kind of makes the connection, uh, but kind of veiled a little bit. Tyndale, New Testament Commentary. R.T. France says, they can even bear to use the precious title King of Israel in mockery of one of whom they have refused to believe. And again, the title Son of God is used. Notice the title Son of God is used to express their scorn. But this time it carries another nuance. For in Wisdom of Solomon 2:10 through 20, we read of the plots of the wicked against the poor and honest man, culminating in the jab. If the just man is God's son, he will stretch out his hand to him and save him from the clutches of his enemies. Here is another Jewish example of the theme of the persecuted son or servant of God, but the words in 43 in fact echo more directly yet another part of Psalm 22, this time verse 8, which probably also inspired the passage in Wisdom. So R.T. France sees this matrix. Remember I talked about passages? And he kind of gets close to putting it all together. Not quite, doesn't actually complete it, but he comes quote. Theological Dictionary of the New Testament, Kittel. You guys are probably familiar with this. Again, standard Greek lexicon. Actually, quote comments on this. And looking at the word hoius, or son, says in Matthew 23:43, the chief priest mocked Jesus in the words of the suffering righteous, Psalm 22:8, because he regarded himself as the Son of God, like the suffering righteous in Wisdom 2:18. In Wisdom 2:13, 18, this designation is fully parallel to servant of God and is used of the righteous man, who trusting in God as his Father will be exalted among the sons of God after the passion and monogamous death. Well, it's Kittel, right? Kittel's a very good work, but it's not. There are some difficulties with it, but nevertheless, you can see they're making the connections, right? This isn't just a Catholic thing. I'm trying to read into the text. Tyndale, Cornerstone Biblical Commentary, Turner and Bach. Let him come down and we will believe. The leaders said they would believe that Jesus was the King of Israel if he would manifest this status by coming down from the cross. In their view, if Jesus really was God's trusting Son, in whom God took pleasure, notice Psalm 22:8-9, Wisdom 2:18-20, cf. Matthew, so on and so forth, God would rescue him from crucifixion. So they see Psalm 22, Wisdom 2 being connected here. This is a fun one, okay? This is the Book of Wisdom. It's a commentary by William Dean. You guys, if you've been watching this stream, yeah, Sam, absolutely. In fact, can I send you the whole PowerPoint? It'd be easier for me. If you don't, I could give it as a PDF or a PowerPoint. And then you can have the whole slides. Just let me know. You're going to love this one. Some see this, now it's talking about Wisdom 2:18, okay? You got it, my friend. Some see this verse as an interpolation by a Christian hand, owing to its marvelous similarity to the taunts leveled at our Savior, St. Matthew 27:43. But see verse 13 and compare Psalm 22:8-9. So this is a Protestant commentary on the Book of Wisdom. It comes to Wisdom 2:18, and it says, this isn't authentic because it's just too similar to Matthew 27:43. So a Christian must have added this in to Wisdom 2:18 is not the original. It's added by a Christian hand. because it's just too much like that. Instead, it must be Psalm 22. Yeah, that's what's going on, Matthew. I love these things. We've already seen a couple of them already in this chill stream, right? That the connections are so obvious and the implications are so great that Protestants are forced to actually cast shades on the text and say, oh, a Christian must have added this to the Deuterocanon because it's too coincidental. It's scary that it sounds like it's being used in the New Testament. And we all know it can't because it's Apocrypha, right? Whew, okay. And by the way, Sam, I'm impressed. You're still awake. International Standard Bible Encyclopedia says Wisdom 2:13-18, the righteous man is mocked for having been forsaken by his father. CF Matthew 27:43. Sorry about this. This is the impact of the Dead Sea Scrolls by Fitzmyer. This is actually a Catholic and sort of Catholic. I include him anyway, just because he mentions the uniqueness of the title of Son of God. He says, a remarkable document coming from Qumran, Cave 4, 4Q 246, which is called often, quote, the Son of God text. The singular Son of God is the title given to an angel in Daniel 3:25 in Aramaic, and in the collective sense in Israel in Wisdom 18:13 in Greek. Now, Sam, I'm sure probably woke up when he heard this. Sam, the fourth person in the fire is an angel. I don't think you believe that. But the singular expression Son of God is not found in Hebrew either in the Old Testament or the Qumran scrolls, according to Fitzmyer. So it's very rare you see Son of God as a title like it's found in Wisdom 2:18 and Matthew 27:43. Hopefully that makes sense. This is God in the World by Jacob Neusner and Bruce Chilton. Says the moment at which Jesus was most fully disclosed as God's Son in Mark is when he is crucified. Now, this is interesting, guys. When the centurion sees his death and he knows with whom he has been dealing, the phrase God's Son stems from the tradition of Hebrew wisdom, which is readily acceptable in Greek. The Wisdom of Solomon, a work of the 1st century BCE, composed in Greek, speaks of a persecuted righteous man, no singular, as God's Son, Wisdom 2:18. Here's the point of the usage of God's relation to Jesus. It's meant by means of vindication. What it's talking about, remember the centurion. What does he say after all this stuff happened and Jesus dies? This truly is the righteous one, right? He truly was just. Let's see here. Commentary on Holy Scripture and Apocrypha. I'm not going to read all this, but basically they make the connection. Dictionary of New Testament backgrounds, Evans and Porter. Wisdom's depiction of the persecution of a righteous person may have been read very early as a prediction of Christ's passion. Matthew himself adds to the taunt of Psalm 22:8 the rationale for he said, I am the Son of God. See what we saw in the lexicons, right? For means it's an explanation of the rationale, right? The claim that that the ungodly seek to test is in Wisdom 2:13-18-20. Augustine in City of God 1720 would go on to quote the passage explicitly as a prophecy of the crucifixion. Okay, that's interesting. Okay, the use of the Apocrypha in the Christian Church by Dubney. SoCal here, he loves this book. I do too. It's written by a Protestant. The germ of the teaching of Luke 14:7-11 has been discerned in Sirach 32:1-2, and there's a considerable resemblance of thought and phraseology between the mockery of the evil at the righteous in Matthew 27:43 and Wisdom 2:18. Yeah, considerable resemblance. The Anchor Bible Dictionary, for the title Son of God implies service of God. Suffering is involved. The leaders of the Jews mockingly asked why God does not deliver Jesus from the cross, since he claimed to be the Son of God. This reflects Wisdom 2:12 through 20, where the righteous, claiming to be the son and servant of God, his father, is oppressed, tortured. Oh, yeah, I forgot to mention that. Wisdom 2 also talks about he boasts of God as his father. Very important factoid. Sorry, I can't believe I missed that. Is oppressed, tortured, and killed by the ungodly who mocked him for believing that he would be vindicated in the end by God. So Anchor Bible Dictionary nails it. Journal of Hebrew Scriptures by Blake examines he talks about Christine de Troyes. I don't know, I can't pronounce French names. An exploration of wisdom of Solomon and the missing link between Isaiah and Matthew examines the biblical sources for Matthew 27:43, which incorporates the language of Wisdom 2:18. Then it continues and says, and she suggests that Matthew was drawn to its reinterpretation of Isaiah's servant with an emphasis on righteousness. Yeah, I think it did, Denzel. I appreciate that. Yeah, so this isn't Catholics trying to read things in the scripture. This is all right there, right? We saw it. We saw the lexical word connections. We saw the thematic connections. We saw that how it uses different text and how these texts are configured and how this taunt is utilizing wisdom. Protestant commentaries say this. And the final point we're going to make too. Here's that that thing they were talking about earlier, Luke 23:47. The centurions who witnessed what happened glorified God and said, "This man was innocent beyond doubt." Okay, so the New American Bible drops the ball here. In Greek, it doesn't say that. He says, "Surely this man was righteous." Or this is the righteous one. Surely this is the righteous one. That's how I translate it. Innocent beyond doubt. It totally obscures it, right? Let's see. Righteous one. So commenting on this, this is commentary on New Testament, Old Testament by Beale and Carson. A centurion's declaration that Jesus was innocent, dikaios, in 23:47 has been interpreted as echoing Old Testament passages of the suffering righteous one, Psalm 22:3-18. I think that is 31. I don't know what it is, 3 and 18, I guess. CF Wisdom 2:12 through 20, 5, 1 through 9, the servant of Yahweh, Isaiah 53:11, and Old Testament passages that describe the expected Davidic king as dikaios, righteous, which they interpret as innocent. And so dikaios, here's the passages they cite, just so you know. The Jeremiah 23:5 describes the Messiah as righteous shoot. Zechariah 9:9 describes him as just Savior. Psalm of Solomon 17:32 talks about him as the righteous king. But Wisdom 2:18 just says the just one, odikaios. Now, of all these texts, notice Wisdom 2:18 is the one that's most directly related to the centurion's words, ho dikaios, except he doesn't use the article ho or u. Why? Because Jeremiah, he's just, but he's a just shoot. Zechariah, he's just, dikaios, but he's just Savior. Psalm of Solomon, he's a just king, a righteous king. But only in Wisdom 2 is he just the just one. and this has led some scholars to make that connection that it's kind of like Mark wants to point to this as like the summit of who Jesus is the just one, and wisdom too. Is Paul that righteousness justification comes from the greatest prominence in the New Testament? Several factors of the pre-Pauline period helped explain the prominence in the Old Testament theme of Paul's mature thought and that of the earlier Christian writings, including the use of the Old Testament phrase, the righteous one, Isaiah 53, Wisdom 2:12-20, to describe Jesus. Isn't that interesting? Okay, now we're going to have some fun. And then I got to conclude the live stream. By the way, guys, welcome aboard. If you haven't subscribed, please do like and do all that stuff. Let's see here. My impression is that prophecy is principally more than precision. However, Wisdom 2:12-20 is rather precise. Yeah, that's a real important point. And I argue that in my case for the Deuterocanon. Not only do you have lots of contact in the New Testament, but it's a long passage too. And it makes some very precise declarations that you find echoed in the New Testament, which I think puts it beyond doubt this is not human ingenuity. This is something more than a human document. So, okay, so let's have some fun. Let's go to cross references. I went the extra yard for you guys, okay? Since you're up at this ungodly hour, I want to make it worth your while. Did Protestant commentaries see Wisdom 2 connected with Matthew 27:43? Yes. We're going to begin with one of anti-Catholic, anti-Deuterocanonical people who love the Glossia Ordinaria. They go on and on about how the Glossia is the end-all be-all because it purports to adopt Jerome's view that the Deuterocanon's apocrypha. Well, guess what, guys? If you actually look up these passages in the Glossia Ordinaria, and by the way, there's different editions, you find notes that basically say, like in Wisdom 2:17, it basically says, this refers to Jesus' passion in Matthew. Okay, and then you go to the 1670 version, you go to Wisdom 2:17. This is from the Ming or Minge. I like to pronounce it Ming. Notice here, guys, at the very end, what does it refer the reader to? Matthew 27. So even the Glossia that Protestants hold in such high esteem makes that connection. Glossia Ordinaria 1481 says that as well. Now this is Matthew 27:43, and it points back to wisdom. Fun, fun, fun. Then we have the Alatain Bible 1535. You have reciprocal cross references here. You have the Vorstermann Bibel 1528-39. Sorry for destroying that word, but I'm just going to spread it out there and hopefully it comes close to how it should be pronounced. Notice here, Matthew 27:43, Wisdom 2, Matthew 27. Coverdale Bible 1535. We have reciprocal cross references. Why is this important, guys? Because the earliest Protestants, when they had these books in their Bible, the Bibles themselves were telling Protestants to refer to these texts to explain the text. This is so devastating, I think, to those Protestants that want to, deny any kind of deuterocanonical use in the New Testament. This is devastating counter evidence. Earliest Protestants recognized it. That's why they kept it in their Bibles, even though they refused to allow them their full canonicity. Geneva Bible 1540. Geneva Bible 1541. Hans Holbein Zurich Bible just has Wisdom 2. Doesn't have it in Matthew 27, though. This is the Liesvelt Bibel 1542. You have reciprocal cross references. The Stephanus Greek New Testament has, of course, it's New Testament, but it does have Matthew 27, as you can see here, Sophia's Beta. The Beisken Bible, 1560, cross references, reciprocal. The Deus Aus Bible, 1562. The Donjon Termel Beza Novum Testamentum, 1565. Of course, that's New Testament only, and it has a reference into, see this, it says FAP. It's actually SAP, which is Sapientian, which is wisdom. Spanish Bible, 1569, reciprocal. These are all Protestant Bibles, folks, except for the Glossia. Geneva Bible, 1583, reciprocal cross references. King James, the King of Jameth, 1611 original edition, reciprocal cross references. If SoCal was here, I'm sure he would cheer. By the way, support SoCal, he's awesome. The Luther's Vertling, yeah, Vertling, 1648. Doesn't have a reference in the Matthew, but it does have one in Wisdom pointing to Matthew. The King James J. Hayes edition, 1677, keeps the cross references. You have Scattergood, 1678 edition, only has Matthew 27:43, but I was unable to verify the Wisdom 2. For some reason, they only had the New Testament. The Blaney 1769 edition, King James Bible, keeps the reciprocal cross references. The Kahn 1828 only has it in Wisdom. It dropped the New Testament cross reference. Cambridge Paragraph Bible 1873. Now, get that, 1873. We're getting closer to modern day. You find reciprocal cross references. Whew. So there you go, guys. That is our conclusion of Matthew 27:43, the Wisdom 2:18. We went through an awful lot in the last couple of chill streams. So I'm giving you meat and potatoes. You're not going to get any fluff over here. We have a nice hearty meal for you. So hopefully you can digest it. So let me open for questions. I can only go on for maybe 5 more minutes. Then I got to close down the chill stream. Got to get going for the rest of my day. All right. So Byzantine Finest, my friend, says, "Wow, this is just more clear info from the original Protestants that they knew the Deuterocanonical books were most definitely inspired." I wouldn't go, well, some Protestants thought they were inspired, but to a lesser degree than the rest of the books of the Bible. But that was kind of cast aside and just flat out rejected. I don't think these show that they're inspired, but what they do show, and I think it very obviously show, that they recognize the Deuterocanon was at work in the New Testament text. And they wanted the readers to know those connections. And I think it highlights the scandal of today Protestant Bibles, because Protestants today, they get saved, quote unquote, they're given a Bible that's been sanitized without these books. There's no cross references, obviously, because the books aren't in them. And Protestants grow up just missing all these things, all this deep stuff that really could help flush out things in the New Testament. They're just completely unaware of it. It's been sanitized, been destroyed. Very sad. But yeah, I mean, this is widely recognized in the Protestant Bibles. All right, Divine Mercy. Hey, God bless you. Got to hit the sack. All right. Well, thank you, my friend, for coming on. I hope it was worth staying up. You should have took a nap like Sam in the chat room. Last call for question, guys, before we go. Just like to rub it in. Oh, you guys are bad. I love these chill streams. They're fun. Now I know why Sam does it, because he has a lot of fun too. And he gets a good sleep, right? I put him to sleep, deep REM cycles. So anyway, I got to run, guys. So I hope all of you have a great day. Remember, we're going to do a team stream. Team stream today with the whole team. We're going to be looking at Gavin Ortland's latest video on Canon. And that's going to be at 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. It'd be great if you could join us. In the meantime, just get some sleep or have a great day. And until next time, which will be Saturday, God willing, we'll do another chill stream. Look at some more New Testament text. Bye-bye, everyone. Take care.